What up guys, SuperMetal983 here bringing us another album review, and this time we've got some local talent for you to check out today, and this one is becoming a very personal favourite of mine in 2020 and something. As a Northeast metalhead, I'm proud that this is from my part of the world. But yeah, I'm going to be reviewing the debut album from the band Orphic entitled Chroma. This is a self-released album. Now, from the ashes of local band This Is Divine, who you may remember on my channel from way back in 2013 when they released their debut album entitled The Great Circle, which was one of my favourites of that year, and it's still an album that I hold very dear to my heart. It is an absolutely incredible album. If you're into old school metalcore or post-hardcore, then definitely check out this album. It's absolutely fantastic. But that band called it quits quite a few years back. I think it was back 2015, something like that, and we haven't really heard anything from them since. But now, from the ashes of that band comes a new band in the shape of Orphic, and this is their debut album. So I first got introduced to this band when they dropped their first single, which is the 5th track on this album, called Disaffect Part 1, which dropped, and I was really excited to hear this, and it brought a different sort of flavour to them all, because I was listening to a lot of more intense, heavier sort of stuff in the shape of death metal and deathcore and stuff like that, because that's literally all I've been listening to, in all honesty. So to break it up with some more metalcore based stuff was really nice and quite fresh, in all honesty. So yeah, when I first heard that thing, I was really impressed with it, and then I contacted Ronnie, the guitarist and songwriter behind this project, asking him about it and what's in line for the future, and he said they're working on a debut album, or they're going to be dropping a debut album entitled Chroma, and I was really excited hearing that, and he says, would I be interested in reviewing it, and there and behold, he gave us a promo copy, and here we are to do a review of the album. So yeah, it is 12 tracks and runs around 43 minutes in length. And what can you expect from this project? Can you expect This Is Divine Part 2? You can in some way, but a more better term to express this album would be a very modern sound, a very atmospheric, very sombre sounding, and very emotion-filled style of modern metalcore, kind of along the same sort of lines as Being as an Ocean's material, like sort of in the past couple of albums maybe, or Silent Planet, for example. Maybe even Architects could be a good example, and with a sprinkling of the Deftones in there. Now, personally to me, I'm not a massive fan of the Deftones. I'm kind of new to their sound, believe it or not. I listened to them way back in the day, listen to their like new metal era, and I wasn't really feeling it. And then their more atmospheric stuff, like the shoegaze influence stuff, I just wasn't really into that sort of thing at the time. But I'm starting to warm up a little bit more to it, but I get the sound now, you know what I mean. But yeah, when I listened to this album and I got the promo, I was really impressed from the get-go, because not only did it have the atmospheric elements that I heard on Disaffect Part 1, it still had some meaty riffs that I did remember from This Is Divine days. Now, I know I'm kind of comparing them a little bit, but with Chris and Ronnie coming from This Is Divine, I've kind of got a bit of a comparison to go with. But I feel like this is definitely a new sound and a new direction for the guys. Like you can still tell it's those guys bringing their A game on their instruments, vocals or guitar wise. But on top of that, it's still them pushing new boundaries and pushing them in a new sound direction, like advancing with the times, you could say. Because there's loads of bands that could that have reformed under different names, but then just continued the exact same sound, and it's kind of like, you know, move on a little bit, or else you might as well keep the name, you know. But I feel like Orphic is definitely pushing the boundaries themselves, and this album definitely is a great representation of that, because it's not just another run-of-the-mill metalcore release in 2020. This has got a lot going for it. I feel like the emotional side of this album and the overall presence and dynamic approach to this album definitely makes it stand out a little bit from all the other releases that we've had in 2020, because I really feel like this is such an enjoyable album to listen to, and it's great to chillax to, but it still has a lot of really good, solid riffs that make you want to bob your head every once in a while. So it's got that kind of 50-50 vibe between like atmospheric chills in there, but then bringing some really meaty riffs, and that's what it kind of reminds us a little bit of Silent Planet. So if that is up your alley, then this is definitely a release that you definitely need to check out. But the riffs on this album are definitely, in my opinion, some of the strongest riffs that I've heard Ronnie perform on, because his riffs on This Is Divine Stuff were excellent, if you ask me. But this one, I definitely feel like there's a lot of attention to detail, just with some really cool licks in there, just to give it that great amount of expression in there, just to give it that kind of like the best way I can try, it kind of gives it a bit of a genty sort of feel, maybe a bit of Periphery vibe in there. Like, it's not as heavy as Periphery, I would say, but some of the more melodic riffage on there kind of does remind us a little bit of Periphery, and a little bit of what they're called again, Pliny, I believe how it's called. I've never truly dwelled into them, but I do need to check, because I've seen some guitar videos of them and they are so good at their craft. But anyway, but yeah, I definitely get that sort of vibe with the riffs, but there is some real chunky riffs on here. It's not really a massively thick sounding album, which I was kind of hoping that it wouldn't have, because I feel like with those atmospheric elements that I heard on Disaffect, that it was going to continue with that real bright, crisp tone behind the guitars, and just make it accent the atmospheric elements very well, which it does in fact do that throughout the entire course of this album. And also, I will say as well, the bass work on this album is absolutely fantastic as well. There's a little bit of a clanky sense to it, cutting through the mix very finely, like a knife through butter, you could say. But it really accents the guitars very well and gives it that groove sort of feel to it, and I really enjoy that sort of spectrum of the album, you could say. That's probably the wrong word, but we're gonna go with it anyway. But yeah, I absolutely love listening to this album, and the vocal performance is also another great thing. Chris, his vocal work back in the day, I really enjoyed his vocal work in it. On the first This Is Divine EP, because he wasn't on the debut album. But this work is absolutely incredible, and definitely has shown his growth over the years, because that was back in the day. I can't even remember when that came out, because that was back in like MySpace days. I mean, come on, that was quite a way back. I mean, but his vocal work on this album is incredible. His you can feel a lot of emotion in his voice, and his range is definitely improved. He's going for a bit more of some like lower tones on here as well, but also adding some like half screams and some cleaner elements on here, just to give it a bit more dynamical approach to the vocals, which I really feel like definitely makes the album stand out a little bit more. And I feel like, as a Northeast metalhead, like, this album is just an absolutely exquisite listen from beginning to end, and some great tracks on here. I mean, the second track, Collapse, was the last track that This Is Divine released back in the day, so they've re-recorded that, and it sounds incredible. It sounds better than the original, if you ask me, and it really sits well with the album, because it shows a growth in the musicians as well, like I've said across this review. Another track that I would say is a standout is Unanswered, which is the third track on this, featuring Juan Pardo. I'm sorry, I'm no good at pronunciation. As you know, it seems to be a regular thing in these videos. But yeah, his delivery on this track, he only gets a couple of lines on here, but it's a more lower range vocal, like a bit of a growl in there, but it really accents, so keep an eye on him. I believe he's got a project coming out very soon, but that's what I've heard anyway. But anyway, moving on, another track that I would definitely say is the track that I talked about, Disaffect Part 1. You may think, well, why is there a Part 1? There's a Part 2 later near the end, which is another incredible track. Both of those tracks accentuate this album, and I feel personally represent this album and its progressive nature in its songwriting and all that. It really represents the album, both tracks, in my personal opinion. My favourite track, though, would definitely have to go to the 10th track with Leogenic, I believe how it's pronounced. Yeah, that track is easily my favourite on this album. I really enjoy its delivery and the riffs on that album, and it's just, you just need to hear it, man. Absolutely fantastic. And then the conclusion, Minutes, is another great song on this album. So make sure you check out this album. It's an absolutely fantastic album from the Northeast metal and core community. I'll leave links down below of where you can check it out. And as I said, if you're a fan of the likes of Silent Planet, Being as a Notion, I would say Periphery, and Deftones, then this is definitely an album that you need to check out. Absolutely fantastic work. Make sure you check out Orphic with their debut album, Chroma. For an overall score though, I'm going to give this a solid 8 out of 10. Absolutely fantastic release, and make sure you check this out if you're into those bands, as I mentioned. But yeah, I'll see you until next video, and remember, stay metal, and I'll see you later.